So you come back from this great experience, you get away, you spend the summer on a boat, you cruise the San Juans, you design a way of working from that. You're using Starlink, and you're learning how to experience the joy of working the way that you love. And one day, an old friend comes along and says, why don't you stop fooling around? They ask you if you're finished goofing around. And you hear it, and something in you just bothers you because it's hard to accept the guilt-free play of just doing whatever you want to do. And so something in your ideals says that you need to be responsible. That how could you afford to be goofing around? I mean, after all, you have bills to pay, you have people depending on you. So how dare you be so cavalier, you say to yourself, about fooling around, doing what you want, dividing your time the way that you want it. It's something in you, a concept says, it's not okay to do that. Now, perhaps the other person is a bit preoccupied with this, and they might just be externalizing their own guilt on you, because you get to do something that they don't. And it's a hidden form of, well, I wish I could do what you do, but since I can't, why don't I point the finger at you? Because I'm deeply preoccupied with something I disown in myself, is I'm so busy trying to demonstrate what a responsible person I am, that I'm finding fault in you. Sometimes that's a dead giveaway. That it has nothing to do with you. Yes, you should own your own triggers as to why someone's criticism or their verbal attack bothered you. But I think it's important to consider who's saying it and what the other person is motivated by in saying it to you. Because in a way, it's sort of a dig. It's saying, you don't have rights to do that. You don't have permission to do that. Why do you get away with it? And all it's doing is camouflaging or smoke screening the deeper concern or preoccupation with the person who's judging. So let's set aside that. Let's say that the person who's judging, that's their predicament. They have to deal with that neural net, and you're not going to scratch their neurosis. So let's just disassociate or extricate ourselves from having to defend a point, because there really is nothing to defend. All there really is to control is what's between you and being free. Yeah, that's the question. The question is, what is between you and being free? Now, free means choice. Choosing to put your attention where it is worthy to you. And that's not something that needs to be proven, justified, or explained. It's ineffable. What you want is what you want. It's nobody else's business but yours. Now, I think the question is, what do you want to create? Because who but a person that needs to correct their shame or their belief that having a choice or doing whatever they want means that they're any less of a person. And so therefore I need to be a sort of this kind of person so that I can live up to my ideals. But let's take that away. Let's just say that the ideals and the beliefs, we're going to leave them outside. We're going to put them in the bleachers and not be at issue with that. Rid yourself for a moment of the belief that I'm not enough if I do things that other people don't like or that live up to the scorekeeping that I have of myself. So I'm going to let myself be foolish. And what does that give me? Well, it gives me, in the context of creating something new, it gives me range. And it brings me into what I call a non-adjacent position, a stance. The word transcendence is to not have any reference to the past. So the question itself, what do I want to create or bring into being, isn't situational. It doesn't need to be consistent with anything in the past. All it's asking is, what matters to me? And if it does, I desire it, will I decide to bring it into reality? Now, in doing so, are you going to be goofing around? Well, in a way, you have to be playful in creating, because the only way to really learn is the willingness to try things that you wouldn't normally have done. And in fact, in the creative process, you can't do anything but that. Because to create what you do not know how to do, create a career, create a new project, you're setting out to create it separate from what you know. And so there's going to be moments where what you do and what you assume is the best course of action doesn't serve what you want. It doesn't move you toward it. And those are useful moments for buoyancy. They're useful moments of making strategic changes. But it doesn't define you as a person. It just gives you useful data, feedback. Creating is iterative. Creating and learning are synonymous. So when you set out to create something, the very first stage of creating is called germination. And if you look in the arts, when anybody sets out to create something, number one is they're not terribly clear about what they really want. They haven't really crystallized the vision until they start in on creating it. Action equals clarity. So it's your willingness to try. So let's say you write down 10 ideas. And most of the time when you introduce these 10 ideas to yourself, you kind of talk yourself out of it. And you say, well, there's a reason why I wouldn't do it. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I don't have enough expertise. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. You run the gamut of all of your reasons not to. But let's say you take those conceptual set points off for a minute. Again, set those aside. Set out the expectations. Set the conceptual set points aside. It's just pure desire. Do I want it or do I not? And how much do I want it? How much does it matter to me? Because not everything matters the same. And as you compare and contrast the list of possibilities, maybe 3 of them are ones that you're going to choose to create. It doesn't suggest that you won't create the other 7, but at least you're going to start selecting some that are near and close. Then you set out to look at the current reality. What is the current state? Where are you starting off from? What do you have? What do you not have? Where are you now in relationship to the end in mind, to what you want to create? And that just gives you a starting point to be able to get clarity on what are my next 2-3 steps that I'm going to implement on behalf of what I want to create. And not to suggest that you're going to be successful, because you really don't have a means to say you will until you create it. You just let go of the outcome. You quit speculating, and you set out to create what your foolish projects are. And maybe 2 of them you figure out you don't want to do it because you can change your mind. And it's not because they're hard. It's because what you thought mattered doesn't really matter. And maybe that's the heart of the matter, is that you learn your vision by creating it. And then you look at what really mattered before, and does it still matter now? But you don't want to mix in the emotional conflict or the level of difficulty, because that can really fool you. Just because you're not satisfied yet, or that things are hard, or there's setbacks or frustrations, that's a natural aspect of creating. You learn how to tolerate that and set that aside. Those distressing elements are all part of the process. But you get to a place in the process, if you iteratively continue, where instead of compromising the vision, you come to a place where you figure out that what you knew conventionally is no longer going to serve what you want to create. And then you have to kick in the innovation. And this is where it gets really interesting, because as you get better and better at things that you did not know how to do and you build capacity, there's a stage in the process where your enthusiasm increases. And what a lot of creators find is that they haven't reached that point in the process, and their expectations really cook their motivation. And then they start looking for ways to make that up. So they try to put things in place and structures that are really not serving their ability to set out to continue creating. They don't have the resilience, or they don't set into that real outcome-focused kind of orientation. They're so sensitive to what's going on with them that they forget to ask the question, how am I doing in the process of creating what I want? And where am I really now? Where's my actual state compared to my desired state? While the whole time, you don't take it so seriously, where you are so scared to fail or even succeed because you think it defines you as a person. And because you've let that go, you can still goof around. You can still mess around, which you will. You will improvise in creating without having to qualify, knowing exactly what you're doing, wearing it like it's in vogue to assure your peers or your critics that you have a purpose, or that what you're doing is what you need to be doing because you got your shit together. In reality, this whole thing about getting your shit together is really just a bunch of rules that someone imposes on themselves and then goes out in the world and looks for others who they can maybe fault for it, because what we disown in ourselves is what we look for in faults in the other. That's how our voice of judgment shapes the way that we interact with people that we want to change. And so if you get caught in those kind of sites, let's just keep in mind that what you're creating right now doesn't need to convince you that you are somehow doing your purpose or knowing who you are, or that you're doing what you came for, or that you're on some sort of calling or mission. Maybe you are, but maybe you're not. But that's not the point. People in the arts aren't hung up on whether they're doing their calling. They're just iteratively going at things, deliberately practicing, going at it to a point where they begin to get really good at what they're trying to create. And as they do that, they continue to build momentum on the top of that. And you get better and better at what you want. And then as you bring more and more of that into being, you realize that that may be more of what you want to do or not want to do. But after all, there really is no sense of living up to, I got to get my shit together because in reality, you're the only one really keeping score. And there really is no sense in keeping score. It's just what matters in create. And create is the choice to create what matters. And then you set out to do it. And it's not that big of a deal. That there are many creations that you will have created that didn't satisfy you. But that doesn't mean that it disqualified the learning process. So you develop this sort of resilience in the sense that you can set out to create things that you might want, and they become more evident as you go. And certain things that you maybe don't have a high desire, you can still choose to create. But the heart of the matter is create or not create. It's not whether you have your shit together or whether you figured it all out. Because in reality, no one has ever really figured it all out. And anybody who claims that they've figured it all out, they must not be alive. Because life is moving at such a pace where the next moment can completely turn on its side everything that you know. That's just the facts of life and a wild card that is constantly coming your way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Current reality, as they say, is an acquired taste. But you embrace it, you learn from it, and you make it your teacher, and you embrace it. So if there is any sensibility and purpose, it's just having a sense of purpose because you know what you want to move towards, what turns you on, what you want to create. And that's a good question to ask. And then as you go, you learn more about what you want to create, and you get better at what you want to create. And then you have more information, more intention, you have more experience to base your decisions on what you'd like to further put your nose into, what you'd like to put your focus on. So I hope that the message in this is that you take away a couple of things. That you let go of having it all together, that you embrace the possibility or the fact that you're human, and that creating starts with being a human being. That doesn't suggest that you live up to someone's expectations, your own expectations. It means that you come at things in a very foolish way, and that you start separate from what you know. Number 2 is that you set out to create things because you want them, not because you need them, not because you have to know that it's the right thing to do, not because you're being responsible, and if you're not being responsible, then you shouldn't create something. But you're letting go of the rules and focusing on your desire. What do you want? And choosing to create it if it matters. And then the learning process, number 3, that creating is learning. And that part of getting on with creating something is working through the stages of the process of starting with those foolish stages where you're not quite sure what you're doing. But there's a point in the process like kindling in a fire where you really get a sense of enthusiasm. And you get a knack for it because you get good at it. And you're drawn to what it is. Maybe you've played the game so much or you've done it so much that you really get appreciation for what you do or how it works. And then you continue to work on what you're doing because you're drawn to more and more what you're after. And that's a way of really professionalizing it. But it doesn't need to be all making sense up front, that you have to pull it all together, figure it all out, know what you're doing, really get serious, be responsible, get your shit together. These are all invisible rules that we impose on ourselves and each other because of some sense of we need to look like we know what we're doing. And we need to have the right answers. And in reality, creators don't start like that in the arts. You know, music isn't made because we're music experts. We become great at music by making music. You know, in my realm of coaching or in my career, I'm not trying to be a coach. I don't even know what a coach is, really. I just want to share this level of influence in this process with people because it helps them accelerate and move faster to what they want to create. And so I continue doing that because it continues to be important to me. And so I work at the process because I appreciate what the process is working towards. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm not sort of hung up on what it all needs to be or what I'm supposed to be by doing it or if I figured it all out or all those things. Because if you ever think you figured it all out, well, look again. It's about maintaining your inexperience, staying curious, and keeping an open mind, and always making room in the parenthesis. And that way you'll always continue to stay fresh in what you're doing and make room in yourself for new responses and to give yourself chances to try on new ideas and to see what hits and what doesn't. Sometimes one that you didn't expect will break through. Other ones, the outcome will come on its own time frame, and it will call on all kinds of resources for you to hold tension over much longer periods of time. Creating can be a way of life, and it's really important just to look at what matters to you right now. And maybe some of the content, the ideas that you're currently working on don't matter to you. Well, then look at those again. Because maybe you can reassess what does matter to you as the subject matter of your creative process. Your life-building process can be the subject matter of the creative process. You can create life as art. And just like in the arts, we can compose by having a current reality in relationship to what we want to create, and then get a sense of what has to happen next from where you are. Reflecting and being keenly aware of what you have now in relationship to what you want to create is really all that matters. Do you need to be more prepared? Do you need to be more organized? Only if those habits or behaviors serve what you want to create. There's no sense in trying to be anybody, and you don't need to be getting your shit together. So I hope this information takes some of the weight off you of having to live up to something versus create something that you want. And it puts you into more opportunities to begin things rather than wait until you figured it all out, make it perfect, or try to qualify it in some way. But rather you start from a very foolish place and see where that takes you. And as you iteratively move towards something, you figure out that you can do it better, or maybe the skill isn't there and this is really pointing you in a different direction. You will learn after all, because there will be movement. And so, thank you very much for listening.